It was 6:04 a.m. when the scream broke through the silence. Not the kind of scream you hear in nightmares, but the raw, soul-piercing cry of a child in distress. A sound so sharp, it sliced straight through the marble halls of the Ellison estate. And just like that, the calm of the morning shattered. "Who let him cry like that?" The voice thundered from the second floor, deep, commanding, furious. Carter Ellison was awake, and when Carter was awake, the whole house froze. Downstairs in the East Wing, Jasmine Miles, a quiet woman in faded sneakers and a navy blue apron, jerked her head toward the stairwell. She had only been on the job 3 days. Her instructions were clear. Clean only the east side. Never go past the third-floor landing, and never, under any circumstance, enter the boy's room. But that scream, it wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't hunger. It was panic. It was the kind of sound that haunted your spine, that made your hands move before your brain could catch up. Jasmine dropped the mop. Didn't ask. Didn't wait. She ran. Up the curved staircase, past the hallway lined with oil paintings and crystal sconces. At the very end, a flicker of light. A door. Half open. Inside, a boy. No older than 7. Curled into the corner of the room, barefoot, shaking. He slammed his forehead again and again into a low bookshelf. Hard, rhythmic, desperate. No one was with him. No therapist, no nanny. Just flashing lights from a forgotten sensory projector bouncing off the walls like ghosts. Jasmine stood at the threshold, breath caught in her throat. She knew this scene, not from training, but from memory. Her little brother Deshaun used to do the same thing, same rocking, same screaming, same helplessness that made her want to rip the world apart. Slowly, Jasmine stepped in. She crouched a few feet away and whispered, "Hey, sweetheart. I'm not going to touch you. Just sitting here. That's all." The boy didn't look at her, but his rocking slowed. She raised one hand, palms open, fingers calm. Then she signed a single word across her chest. Safe. That's when he looked at her. Just a flicker, but it was enough to still the storm. For 1 second. And that's exactly when Carter Ellison appeared behind her and shouted, "Step away from my son!" Jasmine stood up slowly, careful not to startle the boy, but Carter had already stepped into the room like a thunderstorm, wearing a tailored suit. "What the hell are you doing in here?" he snapped. His voice wasn't just angry, it was afraid. Like a man watching something fragile slip through fingers he couldn't unclench. "I'm sorry," Jasmine said quietly, hands still visible, heart pounding in her throat. "I heard crying. No one answered. I just wanted to make sure he was okay." Carter's jaw clenched. "You were hired to clean the East Wing, not invade private family space." Jasmine nodded. "Yes, sir. I know. And I'll leave, but I think he might be scared of you." That stopped him. His son, this boy who hadn't spoken in 2 years, was curled in the corner, whimpering softly. Carter knelt, arms stiff. "Come on, Ethan. Let's get you back to bed." But the moment he reached out, Ethan shrieked, full panic, fists flailing, body twisting away like contact burned. Jasmine's body moved before her mind did. "May I?" she asked, voice steady, eyes on the boy, not the man. Carter didn't answer, but he didn't stop her either. She knelt beside Ethan again, her presence soft, grounded. No reaching, no talking, just being. When she extended her hand, he didn't recoil. He leaned in, and then, as if her arms were a harbor, he collapsed into them, like he had been waiting for that very space to exist. Carter stood frozen, one hand still outstretched, suspended in the air like an apology that never arrived. He watched as his son buried his face into a stranger's shoulder. And for the first time in weeks, the house fell silent. A silence that didn't feel hollow, but safe. Later, in the downstairs kitchen, Carter sat across from Jasmine at a marble island she had just polished the day before. "What did you do?" he asked. There was no accusation in his tone now, just confusion, maybe even a trace of something softer. "I didn't do anything, sir," she replied. "I just listened and signed." "You know sign language?" She nodded. "A little. My younger brother Deshaun, he was nonverbal autistic. This used to calm him." Carter looked down, elbows resting on the counter. For a man who'd built billion-dollar code and acquired 3 startups before his 40th birthday, he suddenly looked like someone who couldn't solve a single thing in his own home. "What's your name?" "Jasmine Miles. I clean for Northfield Services. I'm just a temp." "You're not a therapist?" "No, sir." He paused. "But he trusted you just like that." She hesitated, then said softly, "Kids like Ethan, they don't care about your resume. They care if you're present." And that word, present, hung in the air longer than any silence. Carter stood slowly, his expression unreadable. "You have anywhere else to be?" Jasmine shook her head. "Can you stay a little longer?" She nodded. That evening, she sat in the nursery for hours, Ethan curled beside her on a beanbag, fingers tangled in her sleeve. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. But when Jasmine looked up and saw Carter watching from the doorway, his expression hollow, lost, and deeply human, she realized something. She wasn't just cleaning someone's house. She'd stepped into someone's storm. And maybe, just maybe, she was meant to stay long enough to help quiet it. 3 nights later, the Ellison estate shimmered beneath a canopy of gold string lights and artificial charm. It was the annual Oak Ridge Hills Tech Philanthropy Gala, a who's who of venture capitalists, tech CEOs, and socially aware millionaires sipping Chardonnay like it made them morally superior. Jasmine had been assigned light cleanup duty, mostly kitchen, back hallway, and discreet wine spills. She wore the required Navy housekeeping uniform with the faint scent of lemon polish clinging to her sleeves. No one was supposed to see her, no one ever did, until Ethan screamed. It was sharp and sudden, cutting through the jazz band and halting a server mid-pour. From across the ballroom, Carter Ellison's shoulders stiffened. Jasmine heard it too. Even from the kitchen, she knew that cry, the rhythm, the breathlessness. It wasn't just a meltdown. It was fear. She moved without thinking, through the crowd, past the puzzled glances, dodging a woman in a sequin gown holding a crystal flute of champagne. Ethan stood near the dessert table, eyes wild, hands flapping, his whole body trembling. A stranger had tried to hand him a plate. Too quickly, too close. Jasmine dropped to her knees beside him. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm here." She didn't touch him, just let him see her. And slowly, Ethan dropped the fork clutched in his fist and leaned into her shoulder. The room was silent, not from awe, but discomfort. Then a voice, smooth, cold, laced with condescension, sliced through the quiet. "Oh," a woman said, smirking behind her wine glass. "Is this the nanny Mr. Ellison mentioned, or just a very dedicated maid?" The laughter that followed wasn't loud, just enough to sting. Carter was there, right there, standing 6 feet away, holding a drink, watching it all unfold. He didn't say a word, didn't introduce her, didn't correct them. didn't even blink. And Jasmine? She didn't flinch. Not visibly. But something inside her collapsed. Not because of the woman's words. She'd heard worse in gas stations and grocery lines. But because the man she thought saw her chose silence. She stood up slowly, still steady, still holding Ethan close. "Come on, buddy," she whispered. "Let's get you somewhere quieter." She led him out of the ballroom. No one stopped her. Back in the nursery, Jasmine sat on the edge of the beanbag while Ethan fell asleep beside her, still curled into her side like she was the only part of the world that didn't hurt. She stared at the soft glow of the nightlight, wondering how a house this big could feel so cold. And for the first time in weeks, she questioned whether she had made a mistake, whether presence was enough, when the people who needed to speak up never did. Downstairs, the party roared back to life, music rising again, laughter echoing through the chandeliers, and champagne bubbling like nothing had happened, like she'd never even been there. Jasmine didn't quit. She could have. She could have walked out after that gala, after the stares, the laughter, the silence that hurt more than words. But the next morning, at exactly 8:15 a.m., she knocked softly on Ethan's nursery door. No one answered. So, she let herself in. He was awake, barefoot, sitting by the window, tracing slow circles on the glass with one finger. She didn't speak, didn't try to fix anything. She just sat, cross-legged, 5 feet away, matching his stillness like a quiet echo. After a few minutes, she pulled out a small whiteboard and a dry erase marker. On it, she drew 3 things: a sun, a cloud, a heart. Then she slid the marker toward him. He stared at it, then at her. And, without making a sound, he picked it up and slowly drew a crooked star. She smiled. "That's beautiful, Ethan." That was how it started. Every morning after, they built a new rhythm, color blocks, shape matching. Emotion cards with big cartoon faces, happy, sad, tired, calm. Sometimes Jasmine would hum softly, old gospel lullabies her grandmother used to sing in the kitchen back in Durham. Ethan would sway just a little like a leaf, catching rhythm for the first time. What Jasmine didn't know was that Carter was watching. From the hallway, every morning. He didn't interrupt, didn't say much, but every time Ethan smiled, even slightly, he lingered a little longer. And one afternoon when Jasmine stepped out for a call, Carter entered the nursery, nervous, out of place. Ethan looked up but didn't shrink back. Carter crouched beside him awkwardly. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a folded note card with 3 signs scribbled in blocky Sharpie. More. Stop. Safe. He tried them, one by one. Ethan didn't respond. Not at first. But when Carter signed more again, clumsily with hesitation, Ethan tilted his head and copied the gesture. Rough, but real. Carter's breath caught in his chest. He didn't speak of it. Not that day, not to Jasmine, but something inside him shifted, like an old door creaking on hinges, long rusted shut. Later that night, Jasmine sat on the edge of her bed in the staff wing. She was tired, physically, emotionally, but at peace. She pulled out her worn notebook, the one she'd been filling quietly since her first week. Inside were pages of Ethan's nonverbal cues. What sounds made him flinch, what colors calmed him, the fact that he loved spinning things and hated sudden footsteps. She flipped to a new page and began to write. Day 14. He copied the safe sign today, then smiled. He didn't say it, but I think he's beginning to feel it. She was about to close the notebook when she noticed something odd. Tucked into the bottom flap, something she hadn't placed there. A small envelope, unmarked, cream-colored. Inside, a check, folded once, blank memo line, and a note in clean, square handwriting. For your time. For your presence. Not payment, just thanks. C. Jasmine stared at it for a long moment. She didn't know whether to feel appreciated or bought. But then she turned the envelope over. Someone had drawn a shaky version of the safe sign on the back. Not a child's drawing, but close. Her fingers traced it slowly, and for the first time in days, she let herself believe something rare. That healing might not always come loud. Sometimes it shows up in quiet rooms, crooked stars, and clumsy fingers, trying to learn a language born from stillness. It happened in a whisper. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the nursery blinds. Jasmine sat on the floor with Ethan, gently pressing animal molds into a tray of kinetic sand. She signed the word cow and shaped her fingers into horns. Ethan didn't mimic her hands, but he picked up the small plastic cow, stared at it, and placed it gently into her palm. She smiled. "Thank you, Ethan." And then he spoke. Not loudly, not clearly, but a single syllable passed through his lips. "Da." Jasmine froze. Her heart skipped. Ethan blinked slowly, then touched her wrist. "Da, da," he said again. A second time, this time stronger. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes welled so fast she couldn't stop the tears. It had been 2 years since anyone heard his voice. From the hallway, Carter burst through the door. "I heard... Was that..." He dropped to his knees beside Ethan. "Say it again, buddy," he whispered, voice trembling. "Please..." Ethan looked between them, confused, but calm. Then he reached out, tiny hand pressing to Carter's chest, and that was enough. Carter pulled him close, arms shaking, forehead resting against his son's. "You did it!" he choked. "You did it, buddy!" Jasmine didn't move. She didn't speak. This moment didn't belong to her, but her chest ached in the best way possible. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps at the front door. Carter didn't hear it. He was still wrapped in wonder. Jasmine did. She stepped out of the nursery, down the staircase, and opened the front door to find 3 strangers standing on the porch. 2 men and 1 woman. Business attire. Badges. One held a clipboard. "Mr. Ellison," the man said, though clearly reading the name from a file. "We're from North Carolina Child Protective Services. We received a report this week concerning possible neglect of a minor, Ethan Ellison. We're here to conduct a welfare check." Jasmine's breath caught. She wasn't surprised, not entirely, but she was furious. Behind her, Carter appeared, still clutching Ethan, his shirt wrinkled, his face glowing from tears, just moments old. "What is this?" he asked, tone shifting fast. The agent raised a palm. "We understand this is disruptive, but we're required by law to follow up on all official complaints. If you refuse entry, we'll return with a court order." "I'm not refusing," Carter said, voice like steel. "But my lawyer will be joining us immediately." Within 20 minutes, the foyer of the house had become a silent battlefield. Jasmine held Ethan close. He began rocking again, his body reverting like instinct, afraid of unfamiliar voices. A female agent leaned toward Jasmine. "And you are?" "Jasmine Miles," she said. "Full-time caregiver. Been here nearly 3 months. Are you licensed?" "No." "Do you live on the premises?" "Yes." "Have you ever been left alone with the child for more than 12 hours? Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Yes, with the father's consent." The agent scribbled, detached. It didn't matter that she just witnessed the boy speak for the first time in 2 years. Didn't matter that he clung to Jasmine's neck like she was air. The clipboard didn't care. But then, before anyone could say more, Ethan stood. He stepped out of Jasmine's arms, walked slowly across the room, and approached the agent. He didn't speak. He just reached for Jasmine's hand, took it, and looked the woman directly in the eye. The agent paused. She scribbled again. Then closed the file. 2 hours later, as the CPS team left with no grounds for further investigation, Carter sat on the edge of the grand piano bench, fists balled in his lap. "This wasn't random," he muttered. Jasmine looked up. "What do you mean?" He turned to her. "My former assistant, Sylvia, fired her 4 months ago after she leaked proprietary software plans. Guess where she works now?" "Lark Technologies," Jasmine whispered. He nodded slowly. "And now they're trying to hit where it hurts most. Not the company. Him." The lawsuit was filed 5 days later. Caldwell Ellison Group versus Lark Technologies. Allegations: defamation, unlawful weaponization of state services, and emotional trauma inflicted on a minor for competitive advantage. The media pounced. Billionaire tech feud turns personal. Maid or miracle worker? Boy speaks after 2 years, then CPS is called. Jasmine's face appeared in headlines she never asked for, photos she never posed for, rumors she never started. Some painted her as a gold digger, others as a saint. But none of them asked her how it felt to have her life dissected for clicks. In court, the air was cold and corporate. The opposing counsel moved fast. Sharp suits, sharper questions. They tried to frame Jasmine as unqualified, unsupervised, and emotionally over-involved. She sat silently at the defense table, hands folded tightly, eyes fixed forward. Carter sat beside her, no longer distant, no longer distracted. When the judge called her to the stand, the room stilled. Jasmine rose. Her walk was steady, her voice quieter than expected but clear. "I was hired to clean," she began, "but I stayed because Ethan needed more than disinfected tile. He needed someone to see him." They asked about her education. "I dropped out of early childhood therapy school to care for my sick grandmother. I never made it back. Doesn't mean I stopped learning." They asked why she thought she had the right to involve herself with Ethan's care. "I didn't ask for permission to care," she replied. "No one should have to." The opposing attorney raised an eyebrow. "So, you felt entitled?" "No," Jasmine said. "I felt responsible." She turned to the judge. "Because when a child reaches for you, and no one else, what kind of person walks away?" The courtroom went silent. Even the reporters lowered their pens. Judge Monroe leaned forward. "Miss Miles," she said, "it's not often this court hears testimony from someone with no legal obligation, yet full emotional integrity." She glanced over her notes. "Your presence in that home may have been unofficial, but this court recognizes it as indispensable." Then she looked to Carter. "Mr. Ellison, you're the guardian. Do you wish to continue her employment under formal capacity?" Carter stood slowly. "I do." He paused. "Actually, I want to amend that." The room shifted. He stepped forward. "Jasmine isn't my employee. She's not a guest. She's not a headline." He looked at her. "She's the first person in 2 years to reach my son, not with credentials, not with money, with presence, with patience, with love." His voice cracked. "And she's part of this family now. That's not a title, it's a truth." Jasmine's lips parted, but no sound came. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from something heavier and softer all at once. Belonging. The judge smiled faintly. "That's noted, Mr. Ellison, and respected." She turned her gaze across the room. "And as for the malicious attempt to dismantle this household under false claims, this court finds the accusations from Lark Technologies baseless and driven by intent to harm. Case dismissed. With prejudice." Outside, reporters called her name. She said nothing. But when Ethan stepped forward, took her hand in his, and raised it like she was the one who won something far deeper than a lawsuit, the cameras caught that moment. And in the silence between flashbulbs, truth stood taller than the noise. Fall crept into the Ellison estate with crisp leaves and quieter mornings. The scandal had passed. The lawsuits faded from the news cycle, and the house, once cold and cavernous, now breathed differently. Jasmine stayed, but not as staff, not as someone who disappeared behind doors. She had her own space now. A sunlit guest room with soft rugs, green plants, and a bookshelf slowly filling with early childhood therapy books again. She'd re-enrolled in night classes, online. Quietly, not for credentials, for Ethan, and for herself. Carter had changed, too. He no longer read emails at the breakfast table, no more weekend calls with Europe, no more assistants who couldn't remember his son's allergies. Now, it was Ethan and me time. Every Saturday morning. No nannies, no deals, just a dad and a boy, learning each other in real time. Sometimes Carter asked Jasmine for help with signing. Sometimes they all built Lego cities that took up the entire den floor. But sometimes they just sat in silence. Because Ethan still didn't speak much, but when he did, it was never noise. It was always needful. One quiet Thursday morning, Jasmine was folding laundry in the living room when she heard little footsteps. Ethan appeared at the doorway. He held something behind his back. "What's up, sweetheart?" she asked, crouching to his level. He didn't answer at first. Then, he pulled out a folded piece of paper, slid it into her hand. She unfolded it slowly. A drawing. 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, holding hands, a dog, a sun, a house. Underneath, in clumsy but clear block letters, it read, "My family." Her heart clenched. She couldn't speak, but Ethan did. He pointed at the small figure. "That's me." Then the tall one. "Daddy." Then, his voice softer but stronger than she'd ever heard. "Mommy." Jasmine blinked fast. "Sweetheart, I'm not..." He shook his head gently. "You are." In that moment, every broken part of her, the grief, the doubts, the nights she questioned her worth, began to thread itself back together. Not because someone handed her a title, but because a child gave her a name. That night, as Carter tucked Ethan in, he lingered a little longer by the door. "Can I ask you something?" he said softly, turning to Jasmine. "Of course." "What made you stay? After everything?" Jasmine smiled. "Because one day, someone stayed for me. Not when I was strong, when I was barely holding it together. She didn't have much, just time and tenderness. It saved my life." She looked in the hallway toward Ethan's room. "I guess I'm just trying to pass it on." Carter nodded, his eyes wet but steady. "Then let's make sure he knows that kind of love never leaves." Fade to black. Voiceover. Jasmine, soft, reflective. People think miracles are loud. They expect fire, flashing lights, the sky to split open. But sometimes it sounds like a child saying "mommy" for the first time, or a man finally looking his son in the eye, or a maid choosing to stay when she could have walked away. We don't need to be famous to make an impact. We don't need to be perfect to be chosen. Sometimes all it takes is presence, unshakable, unpaid, unnoticed, but unforgettable. Dedicated to every caregiver who showed up, not for praise, but for love. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who's been your Jasmine. Comment below. What's one act of silent love that changed your life? Subscribe to Hidden Black Voices for more stories that matter, stories that speak without shouting. Have you ever met someone who changed your life just by showing up with kindness? Share your story in the comments and tag someone who's been your Jasmine. Don't forget to like, follow, and send this to someone who needs a little reminder of what real love looks like.